The late afternoon sun glinted off my Rolls Royce as I sat in my parents' driveway, staring at the house I'd grown up in. The once pristine Victorian mansion looked tired now, paint peeling, gutters sagging. The carefully manicured lawn I remembered now overgrown and patchy. It was a perfect metaphor for my family's fall from grace. My mother's desperate phone call yesterday had caught me off guard. 7 years of silence broken by tears and pleas for help. The house was in foreclosure. They needed $400,000. And they had nowhere else to turn. Please, Lily, she had sobbed. I know we haven't been there for you, but we're your parents. We need you. My name is Lily Chen, and at 35, I was about to show my family exactly what their disappointment of a daughter had become. The last time I'd seen them, I was 28 and they were cutting me off. Completely. Financially, emotionally, everything. Because I'd refused to take over the family's failing import business. You're throwing away everything we built for you. My father had shouted that day. All our sacrifices, all our plans worthless. What they didn't know was that I'd already been building something of my own. While they were pushing me to follow their path, I had been quietly developing a revolutionary AI algorithm. The day they disowned me, I had already secured my first round of venture capital funding. Now, 7 years later, my tech company Neurodynamics was worth billions. I'd kept my success quiet, staying out of the press, letting others be the public face of the company while I focused on innovation. My parents, caught up in their own drama, had never bothered to look into what had become of their disappointing daughter. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car. The click of my Louboutins against the cracked concrete walkway seemed to echo in the quiet neighborhood. Before I could reach the door, it flew open. Lily, my mother exclaimed, her eyes widening at my appearance. The daughter she'd last seen in jeans and a hoodie now stood before her in a tailored Chanel suit, wearing jewelry that cost more than their mortgage. Hello, mother, I said calmly. May I come in? She stepped aside, flustering with her hands like she always did when nervous. Of course, of course. Your father's in the living room. We weren't expecting you so early. I followed her through the foyer, noting how the once elegant house had fallen into disrepair. The antique furniture was dusty. The Persian rugs, once the pride of the Chen family, were threadbare. The pride had clearly seen better days. My father sat in his favorite leather armchair, looking older and smaller than I remembered. His eyes narrowed as he took in my appearance. You look expensive, he said, his tone a mix of confusion and suspicion. Things have changed, father, I replied, sitting down across from him. But then, that's why I'm here, isn't it? Things have changed for you too. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, wringing her hands. Lily, we're so grateful you came. We didn't know who else to turn to. The bank is foreclosing. I finished for her. Yes, you mentioned that, along with the fact that you need $400,000 to save the house. What I'd like to know is how you got here. My father's face darkened. The business had some setbacks. The market changed. Suppliers became unreliable. We had to take out loans to keep things afloat. I nodded slowly. The import business I refused to take over. The one you said I was foolish to walk away from. That business, my mother interrupted, clearly trying to prevent an argument. Please, we know we hurt you. We said terrible things, but we're your parents, and we need help. I studied them both. My proud father, now unable to meet my eyes. My mother, still trying to manage everyone's emotions. They looked tired, defeated. Part of me wanted to tell them everything right then about my success, my company, the fortune I'd built. But another part, the part that remembered years of criticism and control, wanted them to understand exactly what they had thrown away. Show me the paperwork, I said finally. Everything. The loans, the business records, all of it. If I'm going to help, I need to know what I'm dealing with. My father started to protest, but my mother quickly gathered a stack of documents from a drawer. As I reviewed them, the full picture emerged. The business had been failing for years, long before they pressured me to take it over. They'd mortgaged the house multiple times, taken out high-interest loans, and now everything was coming due. You're not just in trouble with the house, I said, looking up from the papers. The business is completely underwater. You need a lot more than $400,000 to fix this. We just need to save the house, my mother said quickly. The business. We can figure that out later. I set the papers down and leaned back, studying them. Why did you really call me? After 7 years of silence, Why now? My father shifted uncomfortably. We heard rumors about your company. Someone mentioned you were doing well in tech. You thought I might have enough money to bail you out, I finished. But you didn't bother to actually find out what I've been doing all these years, did you? We were angry, my mother admitted softly. When you left, when you rejected everything we planned for you, it felt like betrayal. We were too proud to reach out, to see what you made of yourself. I stood up, walking to the window. The garden where I'd spent countless hours as a child was overgrown now. The roses my mother had once tenderly cared for choked by weeds. Do you know what neurodynamics is? I asked, not turning around. Some sort of computer company? My father ventured. I couldn't help but laugh. Some sort of computer company. Yes, I suppose that's one way to put it. I turned to face them. Neurodynamics is one of the fastest growing AI companies in the world. Our technology is revolutionizing everything from healthcare to climate science. And I founded it. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stared at me, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. That's impossible. My father finally stammered. You never had that kind of business experience. I had something better. I cut in. I had vision. I saw where technology was going while you were clinging to an outdated business model. The daughter you dismissed as a disappointment built something worth billions. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Billions? Yes, I said simply, which is why your request for $400,000 is actually quite modest. The question is what? Are you really asking for? Money? Or something else? They looked at each other, decades of shared history passing between them in a glance. My father's shoulders slumped, and for the first time in my life, I saw tears in his eyes. We were wrong, he said, his voice rough with emotion. About everything. The business. Your choices. You. We were so convinced we knew what was best that we couldn't see what you were capable of. I felt my own eyes stinging but kept my voice steady. And now that you know I have money, that I'm successful by any measure, is that why you want to reconnect? No. My mother cried. Lily, please. The money, yes. We need help. But seeing you today, realizing what you've achieved, we're proud of you. We should have been proud of you all along. I sat back down, letting my parents' words settle in the room. Pride. After 7 years of silence, after dismissing everything I'd worked for, now, they were proud. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm going to help you, but not just with money. This is going to be about rebuilding everything, including our relationship. And it's going to happen on my terms. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. First, I'm going to have my team do a complete audit of your finances. Everything. No secrets. No hidden debts. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Your team? My mother asked softly. Yes, mother. I have a team of financial advisors who manage my assets. They'll handle this professionally and discreetly. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Sarah, my chief financial advisor. Within moments, she replied, confirming she'd start the process immediately. Second, I continued, we're going to talk. Really talk. About everything that happened. Everything that was said. No more sweeping things under the rug or pretending the past didn't happen. My parents exchanged nervous glances. The Chen family had never been good at emotional honesty. We were masters at avoiding difficult conversations, letting resentment build until it exploded. And third, I said, standing up, you're going to come see what I've built. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to neurodynamics. It's time you understood exactly what your daughter has achieved. The next morning, I picked them up in my Rolls Royce. My mother had made an effort to dress up wearing one of her old designer suits that now hung loose on her frame. My father looked uncomfortable in a tie that had seen better days. As we drove through the city, heading toward the gleaming towers of the tech district, my mother kept glancing at me. What is it? I finally asked. You seem so different. She hesitated, then said, confident, in control. I smiled slightly. I always was, mother. You just never saw it, because it didn't fit your image of who I should be. We pulled into the private parking garage beneath the Neurodynamics building, 40 stories of glass and steel that housed over 3,000 employees. As we stepped into the private elevator, my father's eyes widened at the fingerprint scanner. Security is tight, I explained. We develop proprietary technology here. What we're working on is worth billions. The elevator opened directly into my executive suite on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and multiple screens displayed real-time data from our global operations. "This is impressive," my father said, turning slowly to take it all in. Sarah was waiting for us, tablet in hand. "Miss Chen, I have the preliminary audit results." I nodded. "Thank you, Sarah. What's the damage?" She glanced at my parents before continuing. "Total outstanding debt is approximately $2.3 million, including the house mortgages, business loans, and various credit lines. Most of it is high interest and overdue." I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. The number was clearly higher than they'd admitted, even to themselves. "Options?" I asked. "We can clear it all immediately if you want," Sarah replied. "Or set up a structured payment plan if you prefer to handle it that way." My father's face had gone pale. $2.3 million, he whispered. "Lily, we had no idea it had gotten so bad." "You didn't want to know," I corrected him. "Just like you didn't want to know what I was doing with my life." It was easier to look away. I turned to Sarah. "Set up a payment plan. I'll cover it all, but I want it structured properly. And I want the business officially closed. No more throwing good money after bad." "Understood," she said, and excused herself. After Sarah left, I led my parents into my private conference room. The walls were lined with awards and press coverage articles about neurodynamics innovations, my patents, our company's impact on various industries. "This is what you walked away from," my mother said, reading one of the headlines. "When you refused to take over the family business." "No," I corrected her. "This is what I walked toward. You saw it as walking away because you couldn't imagine anything beyond what you had planned for me." I sat down at the conference table, gesturing for them to join me. "Do you know why I succeeded?" I asked, folding my hands calmly in front of me. My father shook his head slowly, still clearly overwhelmed by the scale of everything around him. "Because when you cut me off, when you took away everything I was supposed to depend on, you accidentally gave me the greatest gift of all." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "Freedom," I said simply. "Freedom to fail, to try, to build something from scratch without the weight of your expectations pressing on me. You told me I was throwing away everything you built. But what you didn't realize was that you were clearing a path for me to build something of my own." My mother wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. "We thought we were protecting you. The business was supposed to be your security, but it was never what I wanted," I replied softly. "And you never asked. You just assumed your dreams should become mine. And now, here we are." She opened her mouth to respond, but I stood and walked over to the wall where a framed article from TechVision Weekly hung beneath the title, "Neurodynamics, the Silent Giant of AI Innovation." "While you were clinging to the past, I was building the future," I said, pointing toward the magazine cover featuring a data visualization of our neural mapping software. "And while you were losing sleep over your legacy, I was creating mine." For a moment, they both stared at the article as though it had punched them in the chest. "We weren't just blind," my father muttered. "We were arrogant." "No," I said, softening. "You were afraid. Afraid that if I succeeded in my own way, it would mean your way had failed. But success isn't a one-size-fits-all concept, and legacies can take different shapes." There was a long pause before my mother finally spoke. "You're right," she said. "We didn't see you. Not the way you really were. We only saw what we wanted you to be." Her words weren't just an admission, they were a release. For both of us. "I'm not doing this out of revenge," I told them, returning to the table. "I'm not interested in gloating. What I want is honesty. A new beginning, if that's something you're willing to work for." My father reached across the table, hesitated for a second, then placed his hand over mine. "We are." "I am." I nodded. "Good, because this next part won't be easy." They glanced at each other again, wary. "I'm not just clearing your debts and calling it done. I want us to rebuild the right way. That means therapy, individual and together. It means real effort, real conversations, and real change." My father looked down at the table, clearly uncomfortable. "Therapy? Yes. The Chen family has spent a lifetime avoiding hard truths. That ends now. I think we can do that," my mother said. "If it helps us start over, it will," I said. "And not just for us, for others too." I pulled out a second folder from my bag, placing it in front of them. "This is my proposal. I've created a trust that will manage your house. You'll be able to live there for the rest of your lives, comfortably. But after that, it will be converted into a foundation home base for a new initiative I'm launching, the Chen Innovation Fund. My father looked stunned. You're using our name? Yes. I nodded. Because as much as you failed me, you also taught me something valuable about grit, about responsibility, about pride. I'm repurposing those lessons into something meaningful. He looked away, tears welling again. I don't deserve that honor. Maybe not, I said honestly. But this isn't about deserving. It's about doing something better with what we've learned. Just then, Sarah re-entered the room. The legal paperwork is ready for your review, Lily. The trust documents, the severance arrangements for the remaining business employees, and the foundation charter. Thank you, I said. Please schedule the signing for Friday, and let HR know we'll be meeting with the impacted employees Monday morning. Of course, she said, offering a small approving nod before stepping out. My father took a deep breath. You're handling all this like a CEO. I smiled. Because I am one. My mother reached for the folder, flipping through the first few pages of the foundation's mission, supporting underprivileged youth in STEM, offering mentorship, seed funding, and access to tools for innovation. She read aloud. This is beautiful. This is what I wish I'd had when I started, I said. Now I can be that resource for others. We spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing logistics, trust structures, closing down the import business, and scheduling our first family therapy session. There was a strange new ease between us, a rhythm starting to form, but the true test came later that week. Friday morning arrived with the kind of calm that only comes before a storm. I had barely slept the night before, my mind alive with the weight of everything that was about to happen. Today marked the formal signing of the documents that would wipe my parents' debts, shut down the family business for good, and begin the next chapter not only for me, but for them as well. When I pulled up to their house, still theirs for now, though technically under the trust, I noticed small but meaningful changes. The lawn had been mowed. The walkway had been swept. My mother's favorite potted rose bush had been moved back to the front steps, as if trying to reclaim something that had once been beautiful. They were waiting for me on the porch. My father wore a crisp white shirt tucked into slacks, his tie neatly knotted. My mother had styled her hair and was wearing a pastel blouse I hadn't seen in years. You look nice, I said as I stepped out of my car. So do you, my father replied, his voice thick with something unspoken. We drove together downtown, to the law offices where the signing would take place. No one spoke during the ride, not because of tension but because we all seemed to understand the gravity of what we were walking into. The conference room was elegant and quiet, sunlight streaming in through tall windows. Sarah was already there, calm and composed, standing beside a neat stack of papers, each clipped and tabbed. We'll go through this one section at a time, she said, sliding the first folder toward my parents. This is the trust document for the house. It outlines the terms of residence, maintenance responsibilities, and the conditions for its future use as part of the Chen Innovation Fund. They skimmed it together, my father nodding. You've made everything so precise. That's the only way this works, I said. Clarity prevents resentment later. They signed. Next came the severance package for the employees of the import business. Sarah had arranged for each of the 5 remaining full-time workers to receive a generous payout, more than enough to cover their transition to new roles or early retirement. I made sure the benefits extend for 6 months, I explained. And we've hired a career counselor for each of them. No one's getting left behind. That's more than we would have been able to do, my mother said softly. I know. The final document was the dissolution of the business. My father stared at it longer than I expected, the pen trembling slightly in his hand. This was my life's work, he whispered. For 40 years. I didn't say anything. I simply placed a hand gently on his. After a moment, he nodded and signed. Just like that, it was over. But outside, in the real world, it was only beginning. Later that afternoon, we walked through the now empty building that once housed their company. The warehouse was silent, the office stripped bare of papers and personal items. I saw my father looking around, taking in the hollow space, his eyes scanning the blank walls. I used to dream about expanding this place, he said. Back when we were doing well, I thought we'd double the inventory space, maybe even franchise one day. You built something that lasted decades, I told him. That matters. Even if it wasn't the future, it was still part of the past that helped shape today. My mother picked up a small brass plaque from the ground, once mounted on the break room wall. It read, "Work hard, stay loyal, build a legacy." We believed in this, she said. We really did. I know, I said. And now it's time to believe in something new. That evening, we had dinner together at their house. It was the first meal we'd shared in that dining room since I was 28. The lights above the old oak table flickered slightly, but the room felt warmer than it had in years. I had brought a bottle of wine and ordered in food from a small French bistro nearby, one of the perks of being able to afford convenience. My father opened the wine awkwardly but determined. My mother set out plates she hadn't used in a decade. Halfway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. "Lily," he said, "what you've done, not just for us, but for everyone affected by this, your employees, our former staff, the community. It's incredible." I looked at him, surprised by the tremor in his voice. "You could have walked away," he continued, "and we wouldn't have blamed you. We earned your silence." "You did," I said honestly, "but I didn't want silence. I wanted change." My mother placed her hand over mine. "We're going to do better," she said, "starting with us and continuing with others," I added. "Tomorrow I'm making the public announcement about the Chen Innovation Fund. I want you both there." "Us?" my father asked. "Yes," I said, "as guests of honor. This isn't just my story, it's ours. The good and the bad." My mother looked hesitant. "What if they ask about everything?" "Then we tell the truth," I said. "We don't need to pretend to be perfect. That's the whole point." That night, I stayed in the guest room, my old room, really, though it had been converted into storage years ago. I cleared a spot and made myself a makeshift bed out of extra linens and comforters. Somehow, sleeping in that space, surrounded by echoes of the girl I used to be, felt like a full circle. Before I closed my eyes, I texted Sarah, "Ready for tomorrow?" She replied instantly. "Always." As I lay back, staring at the ceiling, I realized how rare it was to feel this kind of peace. A peace not built from escape or defiance, but from confronting what was broken and starting the slow, patient work of healing. The press conference was scheduled for noon. By 10, the atrium of the Neurodynamics headquarters was already abuzz with reporters, local community leaders, tech industry watchers, and a handful of cameras from national news networks. I had never stood in front of this many people before, not as the face of the company. I'd always preferred to work in the shadows, letting others soak up the attention. But today was different. Today, it had to be me. Behind the stage, I waited with my parents in the green room we'd set up for guests. My father adjusted his tie for the third time. My mother paced silently, glancing occasionally at the monitors showing the crowd outside. "You don't have to speak," I reminded them gently. "Just stand with me. Be there. We want to," my father said, his voice firm despite the nerves. "We need to." When they introduced me, the room filled with polite applause. I stepped up to the sleek black podium, the lights almost blinding as they reflected off the chrome logo of Neurodynamics behind me. "Good afternoon," I began, steady and clear. "My name is Lily Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of Neurodynamics. Today, I want to share a story, one that's both deeply personal and, I hope, universally relevant." I took a breath. The room stilled. 7 years ago, I was disowned by my family for walking away from the path they had chosen for me. I chose not to inherit a failing business. Instead, I chose to build something of my own, something unproven, something uncertain. What followed were years of work, sleepless nights, risk, failure, and perseverance. I paused, letting the words settle. Today, Neurodynamics is one of the most influential AI firms in the world. We've made breakthroughs in climate modeling, healthcare prediction, and disaster prevention. And yet, this press conference isn't about our technology. It's about legacy and healing. I motioned for my parents to join me. They walked slowly across the stage, uncertain at first but holding their heads high. My parents and I spent years apart, estranged by pride, hurt, and disappointment. But recently, something changed. We sat down, we talked, we listened, and together, we began the long journey back to one another. There were quiet gasps in the audience, some emotional murmurs. I pressed forward. "Today I am proud to announce the launch of the Chen Innovation Fund, a $100 million initiative aimed at empowering young entrepreneurs from underprivileged and overlooked communities. The fund will offer grants, mentorship, and access to the kind of resources I once wished I had. I glanced at my parents. It will also support families who are learning, like we are, that love must evolve with time, that relationships can be rebuilt, even after being broken. The applause was thunderous. My mother wiped a tear from her cheek. My father stared out into the crowd, silent but visibly moved. After the event, dozens of people came up to us, colleagues, reporters, even total strangers. Some congratulated me, others thanked me, but the most memorable were the quiet nods, the teary eyes of those who understood too well what it meant to be rejected, and then finally seen. Back in my office later that day, I closed the door behind us. My parents sat down across from me on the leather couch. "You did good up there," my father said, his voice raspy. "So did you," I replied. My mother leaned forward, clasping my hands. "You've made us proud, Lily, not just because of your success but because of your grace." I nodded slowly, accepting the words with gratitude, but without forgetting the years it had taken to earn them. "There's one more thing I want to show you," I said, standing and walking over to a nearby cabinet. I pulled out a sleek black case and opened it on the table. Inside was a limited edition prototype of our newest AI module, small, sleek, and designed for accessibility in classrooms across the country. On the side, engraved in fine letters, was its name, the Lily Unit. "Named after you?" my mother asked. "Not exactly," I said with a smile. "Named after the girl I was, the one who built everything from her laptop, alone in a garden, while everyone doubted her." They both stared at it for a long time, the weight of that truth finally taking root. The weeks that followed were a blur of interviews, board meetings, fun strategy sessions, and family dinners. My parents gradually became involved with the foundation, volunteering their time to mentor new grantees and learning, perhaps for the first time, how to listen more than lecture. One evening, during a private gala for the foundation's inaugural donors, my father took the microphone during the toast. "I once told my daughter she was throwing everything away," he said, his voice shaking. "But it turns out, she was building something better than I could have imagined. I'm grateful she didn't give up on herself, or on us." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings, and to finally seeing what's been in front of us all along." The room applauded, but I just smiled, catching his eye. That one moment, more than any net worth or corporate title, felt like the true milestone of my life. 6 months after the press conference, Neurodynamics was buzzing with a new kind of energy. Not just from our groundbreaking technology but from something more human, more connective. The Chen Innovation Fund had launched its first round of grants, and I'd just finished mentoring a group of finalists, brilliant minds from neighborhoods that had rarely seen opportunity knock. One evening, as I walked through the company's garden courtyard, I found my mother seated on a bench near the koi pond. She looked peaceful, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I never thought I'd see you so comfortable here," I said, sitting beside her. She turned, eyes sparkling. "I never thought I'd belong in a place like this. But now I think, maybe." I never let myself try. We watched the water ripple for a moment before she added, "There's something healing about being around young people with big dreams. They remind me of you back then, always thinking 3 steps ahead." I smiled. "That little girl you dismissed as stubborn was building empires in her head, and we were too blinded by tradition to notice," she said quietly. I reached over, squeezed her hand. "But we're here now." Later that week, I brought my father to a speaking engagement I had at a university, a guest lecture on innovation, resilience, and rewriting one's narrative. Afterward, he waited until the students had dispersed and then turned to me with something I hadn't seen before: pride that wasn't tangled in regret. "I used to think legacy was about inheritance," he said, "passing down the same tools, the same path. But I see now legacy is what you leave behind in people, in how they think, how they grow." I nodded, deeply moved. "You taught me discipline, focus, and how to keep moving when everything feels like it's falling apart. I just learned to apply it somewhere else." He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a rare, heartfelt hug. In the months that followed, the house I grew up in underwent a final transformation. No longer my parents' private residence, it became the Lily House, the Foundation's flagship incubator space, a place where young innovators lived, collaborated, and learned. We kept the rose garden. We restored the attic into a sunlit coding lab. And in what used to be my childhood bedroom, we built a podcast studio where fellows interviewed trailblazers from every walk of life. My parents moved into a nearby condo, smaller, cozier, and filled with peace instead of pressure. Every Sunday, We had dinner together, no longer out of obligation but choice. They started asking real questions about my work, my ideas, my beliefs, and I started learning more about their fears, the sacrifices they had once made in silence. One rainy evening, I sat alone in my penthouse office, looking out over the city skyline. The lights below shimmered like stars, and I thought about how far we'd all come, from a family divided by pride to one learning how to grow, from rejection to redemption, from a young woman working in secret to a leader empowering others to dream openly. A notification popped up on my phone, a video message from one of our foundation's grantees, a 17-year-old girl from a small rural town, standing in her school's old computer lab, holding a microchip prototype. "Hi, Miss Chen. I just wanted to say thank you, not just for the grant, but for proving someone like me could matter. My parents said girls don't belong in tech, but I watched your speech online, and now I'm building something I believe in. I want to be like you." I watched it twice, then I saved it. And I cried, because that, more than billions in valuation or tech headlines, was my real legacy. The next morning, I took my parents to breakfast. We sat by the window, watching the city come alive. "You know," my father said, sipping his tea, "I used to think our biggest mistake was pushing you away." I raised an eyebrow, and now, he smiled softly, "Our biggest mistake was not seeing how far you could fly. I'm just glad we're here to witness the view." I reached across the table, took both their hands in mine. "I'm glad you are too," I said. We were no longer just a family. We were a story rewritten together, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt like just the beginning.